What's going on, everybody? Jeff here. Welcome back to the channel. AMC is so close to a technical breakout on a larger time frame. Now, coinciding with GameStop moving to the upside, well, it's about 2 weeks away from their 4-to-1 stock split. Now, when the stock split was originally announced, there was a little bit of excitement. Generally, because some investors were expecting this, there is a sell the news event. But if you remember, Amazon just did a 20-to-1 split. And from the time it was announced to the time of the actual stock split, the stock had a nice move to the upside of about 15%. Now, this doesn't always happen, but when it's in a highly anticipated split, such as Amazon was, and you remember Tesla, Nvidia, and Apple, you can go back and do a little research on those. They all move to the upside, and you are potentially seeing that with GameStop. We do have some bigger macro events, okay, that could affect the entire market. You saw AMC, sell off after it bounced off $16, leading up to the CPI, which is going to be released tomorrow, and then the producer price index, which is going to be released on Thursday. And obviously, if those numbers come in much hotter than the analysts expect an entire move to the downside throughout the market, okay? But we're going to take a look at everything. I also want to talk about CPI because no matter what, whether it comes in cooler, whether it comes in hotter, you're going to have a few days for the market to be able to settle, especially if there's low volume. A lot of investors are waiting to make their move. And if you position yourself right, do a little bit of homework, you're going to be able to make a lot of money from this while you still hold your AMC stock, guys. So let's get right into it. First off, let's talk about today. I mentioned this in one of my most recent videos, maybe not the last one, but one of the last few. And I talked about leading up to CPI. And the reason why we had mentioned that, okay, as you saw this nice move from 385 all the way down to sub 380, okay, when you zoom out and you look at the last time CPI was announced, the date was June 10th, all right? And you can see this is the drop right here at about 8:30 in the morning. But previously, we were channeling between 407 and 417 from all the way from May 27th. And at about 2 o'clock, more specifically at about 2:30, we got that break to the downside and it continued. Okay, so I look for that same pattern to repeat today. Told everybody about it inside the group. And I had mentioned it, like I said in my last video, even though patterns don't always tend to follow each other, okay, they tend to repeat themselves. That's why they're called patterns, okay? So just keep that in mind, going forward, obviously the next CPI and so forth. Also, if it does come in much hotter than expected, same thing. You have plenty of days to catch the move to the downside. Okay, it opened up that day at about 395 and we went down to 362 in 5 or 6 days. That's about an 8% move to the downside, and that's in a major index. Okay, so gives you a very good opportunity to be able to position yourself well, as long as you're managing your risk, to be able to make a good chunk of money. While we're on the daily time frame, let's take a look at AMC. This is the breakout that I am talking about over this $16. Now, we got rejected going all the way back into the end of May. This was on the 31st. We did have increasing volume leading up to that, and it's a little bit lower to where we are now, which the entire market is a little bit lower. We traded 52 million shares as of today. But the more times you test a breakout level, eventually it's going to get through. I always say it's like knocking. Maybe not the first time, the second time, the third time, but the more times you test a breakout level, okay, the higher chance of breaking through it. Now, if you look at GameStop, its chart is just a little bit different because it has a lot of wicks to the upside, okay, after earnings, speculation, and so forth. Its breakout level is a little bit higher, sitting at that 152 to 153 level, okay, but GameStop, because it has a much lower float, the volatility, okay, and the price action behind it is much more wild, okay, than AMC. But when you look at the call buying an AMC, I don't know if I mentioned this on my previous videos, but it's been sitting at about a 3-to-1 ratio at a lot of volume. Today was a little bit lighter, just like I said, the entire market was a little bit lighter, but it's seeing about 500,000, contracts traded each and every day. And we haven't seen that as much over the past few months leading to the upside, especially because the IV is a little bit lower. The premiums are really nicely. Now, let's talk a little bit about CPI. My biggest concern when it comes to CPI that is going to be released tomorrow is the housing. And the reason being is because of how much it's weighted inside, okay, the CPI. And I feel like a lot more eyes are going to be on that core CPI, which is not including food and energy. And the reason being is because, and I talked about this in my videos, I showed you the gas charts, that in June, the price of fuel was much higher than May. All right, it was about 10%. Just looking at the price of a gallon of regular gas, it was about a 10% difference just month over month, let alone what it would be year over year. So therefore, everybody knows that that number is going to be inflated, and that's why even the White House said, they're expecting an inflated CPI, which is, I feel like when the media is talking about one thing, they're trying to distract you from another. We've talked about that before, okay? But so they're expecting that top headline number, that 8.6, that 8.8, which is what analysts are expecting to be high. Now, if that blows out of the water, we get a 9.5, 9.6. Okay, then expect, I would expect a big move to the downside. But what they're focused on is going to be that core, which doesn't include gas, okay, energy, and it doesn't include fuel. And you've already seen, no matter pretty much where you are, the price of gas is going down. It was about 480, 485 where I am in Connecticut. I saw it posted on Facebook just the other day. We got a 436 from around the corner. So I feel like that already gets priced in just a little bit. Yes, it might be high, but we already see that it's going down. But housing is the one that is going to be, I think, looked at one of the closest. And the reason being is because, one, it is such heavily weighted, and two, we're at a bit of a tipping point. All right. Well, you've watched mortgage rates increase. Now, generally, when mortgage rates increase, it takes a little bit of time for housing prices to decrease. It lags a little bit. One of the biggest reasons for that, okay, is because a lot of people that have already pre-approved for loans, they get rate locked, right? And a lot of times these rate locks last about 6 months. Meaning, if you go to to a lender to get pre-approved, which most realtors aren't even going to show you a home until you're pre-approved. Back in March, April, you get pre-approved at, let's say, 3.7. You're rate locked for 6 months. So those people that are still buying homes, if they haven't found one right off the rip, okay, they're the ones that are still able to afford it. So that's why you see mortgage rates will spike first and then home prices will go down. Well, this came out just recently from realtor.com, and it is only one article, and it does show June housing plus 16.9% year over year. And you can see the difference between June and May is just a little bit. It does look like it is starting to flatten. All right. And like I said, this is just from realtor.com. Obviously, the way the government comes up with the CPI numbers is a little bit skeptical, but that's what I'm going to be looking at very, very closely. So pay attention to not only just this number up here, all items, which is going to be, they call it the headline number, but this number right here, all items less food and energy, that's also known as core CPI. It came in at that 6.0. Okay, so you're looking for 8.6, 6.0. All right, for a move in either direction. Some of these other stocks, looking at, okay, Apple, this is a stock that is setting up for a breakout. Today has a little bit of a wick right here. We played this one. This was relatively very, very strong today. All right, a little bit of a wick to the upside, but this was setting up for another breakout as well. Boeing, which is one that is inside the Dow, had a massive breakout on the daily, which closed over, okay, that 144 level, still validating that setup. All right, so pay attention to that going forward. Like I said, if we get a nice, where it shows that inflation is cooling a little bit, I would expect to see AMC continue higher to the upside. I've also said this previously, that comes to a point to where some of these high growth, these speculative, these heavily shorted stocks, there's only so much room to the downside. I had mentioned this to a lot of people inside the group. When you look at, ARKK, which is all your high growth, your Kathy Wood, it's starting to base right down here. Okay. And you're seeing it just, there's only so much, it's like what can go low can go lower, but it gets to a point to where it's just like, the more you push the price down, there's just plenty of buyers, stepping in. You watch all this volume coming through, and we're starting to see that with AMC as well. You look at it on the weekly time frame; it's built a solid support. So it gets to a time frame where the shorts have no place to go but to be able to exit their position. So, guys, that's it for this video. I'll make one tomorrow after CPI comes out. See you in the next one.